Welcome to Chatty AF, the Anime Feminist podcast. My name's Amelia, I'm the editor-in-chief of Anime Feminist, and I'm joined here today by Dee, Alexis, and Isaac. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Dee Hogan. I'm the managing editor at AniFem. I also run the anime blog, The Josei Next Door, and you can find me on Twitter at Josei Next Door.
My name is Alexis Pratt. I'm a amateur writer and mostly just watch anime with my friends, so...
That's where we all are.
Right. Nothing super special here. Just kind of, very casual anime fan. So,
Well, so far it sounds like we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
So that's great. Isaac?
Yeah, I'm Isaac. I am an associate features editor at Crunchyroll. I run the blog Major in a Barrel, and you can find me on Twitter at iBlessAll.
And we are gathered here today to talk about Ouran High School Host Club.
You made that sound so serious. We are gathered here today to talk about a shoujo comedy.
I think Tamaki's rubbed off on me a little.
You're going to be very dramatic today.
I just take myself extremely seriously.
Well done.
Yeah. So this is going to be our next Watchalong series. Now, Watchalong, for anyone who's not listened to Chatty AF before, is where we watch 6 episodes of an anime at a time, and then we get together as a group of people who have watched it before and love it, and a group of new viewers, 2 or 3 new people who've either not seen it before or not seen much of it before and don't really know what to expect. And then every 6 episodes we record and we talk about what we think of the 6 episodes we've just seen, what we think is likely to happen, what we hope will happen, and so on. So it's just a way of revisiting a slightly older show with quite a fresh perspective. And I'd like Dee to explain why we chose Ouran High School Host Club, because to my memory, what happened was Dee discovered I had never seen it and then instantly said, we're doing a watch-along. And that was that as far as I could tell. But Dee, you had reasons for choosing Ouran, right?
I mean, that was kind of the gist of it. When Dame Pri came out during the winter season, you watched the first few episodes and really liked it, and it just kind of came up in conversation. I was like, yeah, it's kind of like Ouran, but for otome games specifically instead of for shoujo manga. And I was like, you've seen Ouran, right? And you said no, and there was a very dramatic gasp on my end, and I decided that we needed to do this right away. I think there are good reasons to have it as a watch-along other than just I want Amelia to watch this show, and I want an excuse to rewatch it. It is arguably the most popular shoujo series in the West that isn't named Sailor Moon, so it certainly has a large fan base and a large effect, I think, on a lot of anime fans. I also think it talks about both the genre tropes and gender norms in ways that make it a really good candidate for an extended discussion, both in terms of things that we can talk about that it does well and things that it maybe doesn't do so great. So
can you give a bit of detail, Dee, on the history of Ouran High School Host Club? Because my memory of it is just that it showed up out of nowhere one day and was really popular, but there's a bit more to it than that.
Yeah, I can give you some background details here. So the manga was first published in the shoujo magazine Lala in the year 2002. It is by Bisco Hattori, whose other 2 series, Millennium Snow and Behind the Scenes, are also both available in English. And then the anime, and then Shoujo Beat published it pretty quickly in English as well, Ouran High, and it was fairly popular. The anime is produced by Bones, and it ran during the spring and summer of 2006. The anime has a very good pedigree, and there are probably going to be people who are angry at me for saying this, but I think it's better than the manga. It's
the hot take start.
Yeah. It's helmed by Igarashi Takuya, who is the director, and the series composer is Enokido Yoji. These are, just small-time directors and writers who have worked on such minor series as Sailor Moon, Revolutionary Girl Utena, Soul Eater. They've also done Star Driver, which is a personal favorite of mine, and most recently they worked together on Bungo Stray Dogs. The 2 of them tend to work in tandem. Igarashi has a very, what's a good word for it? He has a very energetic aesthetic, I think, that brings out kind of the charm and endearing qualities of his characters very well. And he also pulls from the same school of directing that Ikuhara does in some ways with his aesthetics and visual direction, which makes his productions very, very exciting to watch, I think. It was then licensed very quickly by Funimation, even though this was kind of during the anime dark ages in the mid-2000s, and it is currently streaming on both Crunchyroll and Funimation, so check to see if it's available in your region, of course. And again, it became kind of it became as close to a mainstream hit as you can get, I think, which I always found very impressive. I'm honestly shocked. I found 3 whole anime fans over the age of 25 who haven't seen it. So this is very exciting.
That was the first thing that came up when we started talking about doing it as a watch-along. Dee was like, well, of course we won't possibly find anyone but Amelia who's not seen it.
And then I remembered Isaac. And then Caitlin told us, she was like, I have a friend who hasn't seen it either. So we were able to find some folks, which is
We're
good.
actually turning people away for this one.
I came to anime very late in life, besides some very normal like shonen stuff when I was in high school. So it's a lot of discovery lately. Caitlin's been taking me through a lot of stuff, and then this came up. So hey,
That's awesome. Perfect excuse.
We're really pleased to have you. Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing about Ouran is very much a response to a subgenre that had been sort of on the rise over the 10 odd years before Ouran came out. Otome games first started coming out in 1994, and you had a lot of popular franchises launching in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Things like Angelique, Harutoki, Tokimeki Memorial, which actually gets a nod in these episodes as Ukidoki Memorial. And then on the manga side, you also had reverse harems, which are, kind of similar format to an Otome game. That were also becoming more and more popular. Shigeyugi in 1992, I think, really popularized the genre, and then you had things like Hanakimi, The Wallflower, lots of other titles. So you basically had most of a decade of all this material in this subgenre, and over that time, you had these different narrative conventions and tropes and character archetypes that had been really solidified. And so Ouran sort of comes into this period of time after you're starting to see these very set patterns, and Ouran is very much addressing that and commenting on it in the way that a good parody, I think, does. And so that's something I find really interesting about it, and will probably kind of keep jumping us back to from time to time. But I think it's good to know where it's coming from, because so much of what it is doing is playing with these tropes that existed before it.
That's good. I'm really glad we've got your kind of awareness of that whole genre or subgenre, because there are certainly times when I'm going to be raising my eyebrows and saying, why is this here? This doesn't feel right. And you'll say, no, it's just a natural, like it's calling back to something that has been referenced. So yeah, very glad to have that kind of knowledge underpinning this. Thank you for doing this, Dee.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't help but notice, though, when you were doing the Igarashi and Okido list, that you skipped Captain Earth. Was there a reason for that?
It's the only one of his shows. Besides the fact that it's
bad.
It's the only one of his shows I've never been able to finish.
That's completely fair.
I just kind of went, let's just ignore that one.
I apologize for bringing it up then.
Oh no, it's okay.
Because that's why you watched a little bit of Ouran before, right, Isaac? Because of Igarashi?
Yeah. So I watched it. I started Ouran right after I had seen Star Driver. Which Dee mentioned earlier, which is also a favorite of mine. And I was just really in the mood for more of his and Enokito's style and the way they're writing. And people have been recommending Ouran to me for, a long time. Like, sort of like Alexis, I kind of came into anime a little bit late, and I kind of started with simulcasts, and so I've been like going back for years and like watching older popular stuff. And in that time, I couldn't tell you the number of times people said, "Oh, have you seen Ouran?" And I'd be like, "No," and they're like, "What? You haven't seen Ouran?" And I'd be like, "No," and they're like, "Well, you would totally like it." So I'm glad to have this opportunity to kind of come back to it and really watch it in earnest, because I did see the first 4 episodes after Star Driver, but then got distracted by like other giant robot anime or something like that. So
yeah, no, I had a similar experience for entirely different reasons. I started watching it as an anime fan. I had a big gap of about 10 years, which is not that unusual, but I actually stopped watching anime around 2006, which is when the anime came out. So I watched a handful of episodes back then through fairly illicit means, because that was kind of the only option you had at the time. But I kind of stepped away from anime as a whole, and I didn't go any further with it. And then 10 years later, suddenly it's an anime that everyone's seen. And much like you, Isaac, I've had people recommending it to me as soon as they find out I haven't seen it. It's like, what? How can you? It's just part of the kind of canon that you're expected to have consumed, especially if you work as a critic. So to not have seen it has felt like a gap. And I remembered enjoying it well enough, but these kinds of over-the-top comedies are very hit and miss for me. So I didn't particularly have a reason to go back to it. And I've been really pleasantly surprised. So looking forward to talking about that. But first of all, Alexis, you said that you're quite a recent, or you've come to anime quite late in life, and you're going through this for the first time.
Yeah.
But do you have any of the kind of, did you have the same kind of context as Isaac and I, where people were recommending it to you a lot, or did you kind of come to it a different way?
It never really came up until recently when, oh God, what did it come up because of? I think we were discussing Danganronpa of all things. I've been like catching
Caitlin?
up.
That's very out of character.
I know, that's very out of character for Caitlin. We'd been talking about it, and she made a reference to it, I think, and I was like, I have no idea what you just said. And she looked at me like I had 3 heads, and that was it. She's just like, no, you need to watch this. And then a week later...
I know exactly the look you're talking about.
And then a week later, she's like, hey, AniFem's doing a thing. You want to get in? So here I am.
Oh, that was really good timing.
It was weirdly, like, impossibly good timing. And now here I am. I've gotten 6 episodes in.
So you know nothing about it then, other than you just went in completely cold, or did you do any reading?
I've seen very little of it. Namely, I've seen reaction images taken from stills of the anime, obviously.
Yeah.
Which, you know, everybody sees those
Very
kind
good
of
for that.
things. But other
Yeah.
than that, no. Like, I was warned ahead of time about some of the gendered language used later on, and that wasn't necessarily a surprise. It's from 2006. But other than that, I went in completely cold.
Perfect. And Dee, what's your background with Ouran High School Host Club?
Well,
You've got 2 minutes.
okay, well, I picked up, so Shoujo Beat was bringing the manga out a little bit before the anime, and I had a friend recommend it to me, so I had read, I think maybe the first couple volumes of it, and I was enjoying it, and then I found out there was an anime. So I tracked down the anime through those illicit means that you mentioned, because the year was 2006, and Crunchyroll was nary a twinkle in anyone's eye at that point. But I did eventually buy the DVDs, so it's all good. But my roommate and I watched it pretty quick after it had come out, so like probably early 2007. We fell in love with it, and then we just started showing it to everyone we knew. I had a bunch of anime friends growing up. I forced them to watch it in our anime club. I kept up with the manga and finished that. I eventually bought the anime. The anime is one of my top 10 all-time favorite anime, like it's on that list easily. One of my top 5 favorite comedies. There are episodes that I've seen at least a dozen times because it was for a long time and still kind of is. Parts of it are sort of my go-to show when I'm having a bad day and I just want to put on an episode of something and just giggle. So I love Ouran a lot. I know it's not perfect and there's a few episodes that I genuinely dislike, but overall it's just very warm and it makes me happy.
Yeah, I was really surprised actually by how warm it does feel, because I didn't really remember much of it. But what I did remember is it's host clubs and it's rich kids, and it's like I remembered it having the potential to be quite mean, and there's just that's not really there. Which, I mean, apart from moments with Tamaki, but he's such a clown that I think it doesn't come across as sort of malicious.
I think Ouran does a very smart job in pretty much from episode 1 of establishing that Tamaki and most of the other hosts are idiots, and Haruhi is kind of our moral center. So when they're being ridiculous, we're supposed to just laugh at them and not take them seriously, and then you kind of look to Haruhi to see like what we as an audience are maybe supposed to actually take out of things. So, you know, Haruhi complaining about the damn rich people disconnected from reality, or how they get way too hung up on gender norms and things like that. I think that, and again, and there's some stuff in there that's worth criticism, but I think because the show does establish so early that these are the clowns, like you said, it makes it makes it feel a lot warmer and nicer about some of the genre antics they get into.
Yeah, one of the other things that I noticed is last time I saw it, I was in the middle of a Japanese degree. I'd never been to Japan. I was quite, all of this was new. I couldn't understand Japanese at that point except little bits and pieces. Whereas now I'm watching it as a Japanese speaker, as somebody who's been to Japan, as somebody who's a lot more familiar with anime in general from a critical perspective. And the idea of rich kids finding host clubs as aspirational is so weird to me now, because host clubs are really they're not a pleasant thing. Well, I mean, I've never been to one because can you imagine some guy trying to charm me in a bar? Like, it doesn't it doesn't go down well. But it's something that I have had friends who've studied host clubs. I've had friends who've been fans of going to host clubs. I've heard the stories. I've seen the pictures. It's not something that you would expect rich kids to kind of set up a club with kind of this romanticized aspirational perspective. And maybe aspirational is not quite the right word, but romanticized certainly is. My understanding is that the biggest market for host clubs is actually sex workers. They finish their shift and they go somewhere where they don't have to put on a face and be performative themselves. And so it's quite a gritty world, is my understanding. And there are documentaries out there of the things that the hosts have to do to try and get people to keep drinking alcohol, which is how the bars make their money. It's quite an unpleasant underbelly. And you've got these rich kids in a school that has Big Ben in the middle of it for some reason, a pink Big Ben tower. Which is very bizarre. And as an English person watching it, and they've got that one moment where they talk about the antiques markets in London, and it's so strange to have these things kind of mashed together. And something else that kind of bothered me a little bit is that just kind of baked into the premise is that every week they're doing kind of a new setup to please their clients. And this goes kind of cultural appropriation directions more often than I would like. You see them dressing up as like Arabian kings and things like that, and that I didn't enjoy that aspect of it very much. I don't know, did anyone else?
Yeah, they jumped into it immediately on episode 2 with I showed Tamaki a Balinese like travel brochure, and now here we are. Yeah. We just spent like 500,000 yen on a bunch of plants and this crazy costume, and we
live toucans and pythons.
Yeah, like, man.
I mean, I guess it's in keeping because these are rich, sheltered children, and of course, like, the idea of cultural appropriation wouldn't have even occurred to them. It didn't occur to a lot of people in 2006, especially.
Oh no!
But it's watching it in 2018 as somebody who's quite conscious of these things was actually a little bit. Had a few moments where I was like, oh no, please don't do this again. Because they have this kind of Polynesian thing in episode 2, and then in episode 5, 6 I think it is, they go and make him an Arabian king.
Yeah, it was 6. They do the whole yeah
the host club is very equal opportunity appropriate culturally insensitive costumes, so that will be a thing that will probably continue to ping for you. They'll in later episodes they'll do some more Japanese themed ones too, not that makes it better, but yeah, I mean that's just them doing these crazy fantastical themes based on different stories and cultures and histories is a recurring thing. Yeah. And
it's not necessarily a criticism because, again, these are very privileged young rich kids. Like, this is exactly what I would expect kind of publicly educated kids in England to do, quite honestly. Public education like Eton or something like that, like extremely elite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So... like that is what I would expect of rich kids anywhere, is to have that kind of insensitivity. So it's not that it doesn't work, and it's not that it's kind of a deal breaker. It's just you just notice it. I think.
Yeah, I think it's
through this lens.
Yeah, it's not something I think I ever necessarily picked up on because again, it just struck me as these goofball high school kids. Watching Ouran this time around is going to be kind of fun because I've always just watched it to laugh, and I've never really like looked at it through a critical perspective. So this is.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. This is good. I like doing stuff like this. This is a good. I'm already picking up on things that I hadn't before, so I think that's great. I think that is totally a fair criticism too, though, because I think there are times in the show where the characters are being ridiculous and somebody calls them out on it, and so you know that the writer is aware of it and is letting us know, like, yeah, no, this isn't really okay, or this is silly, or whatever. And that, like, Haruhi thinks it's extravagant, but the cultural appropriation aspect is never really touched on. So I think that's totally a fair criticism, that it's ridiculous but not properly addressed in the show itself.
Well, and it all ties into when you were saying earlier, like, they're all idiots, to me it's like they're idiots, but they're not just idiots, they're rich idiots specifically. Mm-hmm. And You know how Utena has their like little refrains that they do, that the like little speeches that characters give over and over again, and the one that Ouran has is the little monologue that Tamaki does at the beginning of most of the episodes, where he's like, you know, talking about introducing the host club and being like, look, this is like a super luxury place for the super rich kids where they come to hang out and have fun. And he like brings up the topic of wealth in relation to this multiple times, and it's a playground, and so that's the word they use to describe it. And so, you know, when you're talking about cultural appropriation and everything that they do is like contextualized inside this little bubble of like, for them it's all just, you know, this game that they're playing because they're bored. Basically, they're a bunch of bored rich idiots, and this is what they're doing to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's a really good way of putting it.
True. I think there's an aspect of, because like Amelia, you pointed out that this is very different from a regular host, from like what host clubs in the real world are like. Yes. And a part of me thinks that kind of what Hattori was more interested in here was using the host club as an excuse to really call out, maybe call out's not quite the right word, but to really highlight the artifice of a lot of the archetypes that were present in these reverse harem stories. So with the host club, you have, like, it's just doing away with the idea that any of this is grounded in reality. It's like, no, this is a fantasy. This is a fantasy universe that everyone is aware is a fantasy universe, and they're all sort of just taking part in this big game. So, you know, all the characters have their roles and their types that get brought up on the regular, and everyone seems to be aware of it. Like, the students who come in know about it, and the hosts, obviously, again, they're all very aware of, like, that they're taking maybe some characteristics that are a part of themselves, but are then sort of exaggerating it for this game they're playing, that is sort of making these girls happy. And I think in some ways that's sort of a commentary on the reverse harem subgenre as a whole. And what I like about it is that it calls out the fact that a lot of this is bullshit, but it doesn't really judge anyone for enjoying that. It's like, yeah, this is a fantasy, but it's an escape. It's something fun that these girls are enjoying, and everybody's aware that it's just this fun thing that they're enjoying. And so I like that it. I think there's some stuff done in some of the later episodes that we can kind of talk about as we go, where it draws a line between the fantasy and maybe bringing that too close to the real world. But I don't think it judges people for wanting to indulge in a little fantasy, and I kind of appreciate that about it.
See, yeah. I struggled with that a little bit because, I mean, so the biggest issue that I think I have with Ouran, like the biggest thing that I kind of wince at when I see it, is the twins. And watching the girls watch the twins, it just, every time I see it, it brings up everything I've ever read about how women fetishize gay relationships through BL. And it's I mean, I'm just too immersed in kind of that commentary, I think, to really kind of not take it seriously when I see it on screen. And I'm like, oh no, is watching this, I know it feels quite uncomfortable to me to watch these. I mean, for a start, they're brothers, and that's already a bit didn't enjoy that. But then they, like, there's so the episode I really didn't like very much was the health check episode, where you've got these kind of girls just standing as an audience to see these boys take their shirts off, and like, I don't like seeing any anime characters take their shirts off in these kinds of situations. I'm just not interested. So having that as kind of the center point of that joke, and having it be the twins, and having them be talking about playing doctor at home, and having this whole bank of girls just standing and watching with blushes, and oh, thank goodness we get to see them touch each other shirtless. It was all a bit much, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm fairly hardline about this kind of thing anyway, so that's the only thing that I really didn't enjoy. Alexis, how was it for you? You've been a little bit quiet so far.
So here's the thing, I really like the twins as characters when they aren't playing to the, oh, but we're brothers.
Yes, exactly.
Because the episode that was focused on them was actually hilarious, and I also really enjoyed Haruhi seeing straight through them, like, every time. And just, I really enjoy them when they aren't being awful characters of BL romance.
There was that beautiful moment at the end of the twins episode where Haruhi sees through them again, even though they've changed their hair dye. They swapped their hair dye. she sees through them again and she walks away, and one of them just looks at the other one.
That's the thing.
That is one of the best. It's such a good moment of visual storytelling where Hikaru is looking straight at Haruhi, and Kaoru is the only one who glances to look at his brother, and then glances back again and kind of realizes that things are changing. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I just really like a lot of the way this anime is shot in general. Just there's so much going on most shots, like in a way that you don't see in a lot. Like, if I imagine this anime in 2018, I don't think it would be nearly as flamboyant or crazy. Like, maybe that's just because I've been watching Persona 5 the anime, and that's been kind of just standing there and casting spells or talking. It's hard for me to imagine it coming out like now and looking like it does.
You might like Dame Pri Anime Caravan.
I might recommend. Well, I would say check out maybe some of Igarashi's other works, because that very visually dynamic, energetic style is something that's big for him, is to keep the movement and to tell the story as much through what's going on screen, both in terms of the big foreground actions as well as the way characters are reacting in the backgrounds and things like that. I mean, he's a really good director, so that's certainly part of it too, I think.
Okay.
The comedy is so strong, and the aesthetic is also so strong. Like, Isaac, I think you mentioned Utena, and that was my first thought when I started watching the first episode, was the huge over the top kind of imagery, and it completely rang that Utena bell for me. But obviously that's kind of the only thing that's really Utena like. But at the same time, the comic timing is spot on. The voice actors, they're perfect. And it was surprising to me that they also had this really quiet moment at the end of the twins episode, where, as you say, the storytelling was just note perfect, but it was really subtle. And to have all of that in a single show, and a comedy show as well, I was not expecting that at all.
The thing that was really interesting to me about that episode, the twins episode, is though it starts off with them on the bench together, holding hands and talking to this girl. And when I saw them on the bench, I thought, oh, I've seen this episode or this beat character storytelling beat before, but it's always been with female characters. How many times have I seen in an anime where it's two sisters or something against the world? And I mean, I was reading a young adult fantasy novel recently, and it was the same thing. It was two twins, and it's these two girls against the world. And I mean, I think some of this just comes from being in this particular genre. But I was like, oh, I've seen this, but it's with boys. What are they going to do with it? That's different. And I don't know. I think in terms of the general emotional arc, it's similar to things I've seen before. But oh, dang it, I lost my train of thought. But it was just interesting to me that it started serious, and then with this framing device, and then went really silly. And I'll be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of all the in-between stuff, like the fight. But again, that final moment, that shot where one of them looks at the other, then back at Haruhi, is really stunning, because it adds so much more weight to everything that's come before. Yeah,
getting to see someone because they're both played for comedy the whole time in every other episode, seeing them have an emotional, serious moment was actually incredibly effective. And I think we mentioned it before, but I do appreciate that the show can do both.
Yeah, kind of just going back to that opening scene with the flashback of them on the bench, which, by the way, is so well storyboarded. It's a bunch of shots of them in mirror parallels, both sides of the image, perfect symmetry, and then the little girl shows up and suddenly the camera is tilted and from a distance, and oh, it's so good. Sorry. Sometimes I get excited about framing. But the one thing I really like about that episode is the timing's very good, because it comes right off the heels of the Renge episode, where you've got this character who shows up who doesn't really see that line between reality and fantasy, and is sort of trying to impose all these archetypes onto these actual, quote unquote, actual people. And Haruhi sort of snaps at her about you should probably not judge people by appearances. You should take the time to get to know them. And then the next episode with the twins, we really see that in action with the way Haruhi can tell them apart, because she's spent time actually getting to know them as people. And I think that opening scene does a good job of establishing, again, I keep coming back to this balance between the artifice and the sincere, where you see how the twins growing up people kept seeing them as a single unit. And it was clearly something that bothered them when they were young, because they sort of challenged her, like, well, no, which of us do you actually want to spend time with? Like, do you have any idea that there's a difference between the two of us? But then now that they've gotten into high school, they've sort of taken these insecurities they had and kind of made them a part of their whole sort of persona, like the thing that makes them stand out. Which I thought was very true to adolescence, and how you can sort of sometimes take these things that bother you and then be like, no, this is my identity now. But also the way the show kind of plays with that, and how maybe that's not super healthy, and they need to start moving away from that outside of their roles in the host club. So I think that episode's really good.
There's another episode I want to talk about. We're getting through so much. It's really great. I'm conscious of time. There's the episode with the young boy. Episode 6, I think
Shiro.
it is.
Yeah. Shiro Takeuchi.
So, yeah, and this is the other kind of issue that I have with the core premise of Ouran. It's not the premise exactly, but like the characters that we're going to see this again and again. So we've got Honey, who looks like a literal child. I mean, he is a literal child, but he really looks like a literal child. And the reason that the girls come to the host club, for everyone else, it seems to be because they are attracted to these boys. And with Honey, it's something a bit different, but it's all kept in the same kind of category, and that's a little bit uncomfortable anyway. And then you've got this little boy who shows up, and while Tamaki is kind of showing him what he does so that he can learn how to please women, he makes this comment about love knows no age. It's fine if he's a young boy. You turn me into a young boy when I look at you. And it's, I don't know, that seems to be something that Ouran's quite comfortable with. That idea that just having these young boys there as a point of appeal, as a point of attraction, even if it's not kind of dressed up as sexual attraction exactly. I don't know, there was something about that just, I think that's going to bother me a bit in future weeks as well.
Yeah, I agree. And especially with the way that episode ends, where he's literally surrounded by women talking about, his long-distance girlfriend that they email about every night, while they all just fawn over him, was, oh my god. The show is great, but it's also a lot.
And I don't like it when people do that in real world, when they're like, does your 1-year-old baby have a girlfriend? Like all of that. I don't like any of that in real life. So kind of seeing that played up a little bit for laughs in this, like I just didn't find that beat funny at all. So I don't know if we're going to kind of dig deeper into that ground with Honey, or whether we're going to, as we did with the twins, we got to see a bit past the twins. And as you said, Dee, we kind of got to see a bit of the reason of why they've ended up kind of leaning into this thing that perhaps they've been uncomfortable with in the past, and leaning into it as part of their high school persona. Maybe we'll see a bit more of that with Honey. I have no idea.
I really hope we do, because on like the surface, I enjoy Honey just being like
adorable.
Yeah, just he's a cute presence that balances out the like ridiculousness of Tamaki and the like low-key homoeroticism of the twins, and whatever's going on with Mori, the tall silent guy who's had maybe 5 lines so far. He works as a good foil, and I really hope they do something with him, because I want to enjoy him.
Yeah, Maury's at this point is just a non-entity, right? He's just there for Honey to climb on and kind of to stop him and to call him by his first name, which is obviously something people like to see. But then I'm just kind of keeping in mind that Tamaki in the health check episode, he kind of describes all the rest of them as the homo supporting cast. Which doesn't look so good in 2018. I'm sure it didn't look that great in 2006 either. But it's by him saying that about all of them, that was kind of an oh dear moment for me, because the twins are playing this up. Honey and Mori, they don't seem to be, but is that what's intended to be read into it? When like is that how Tamaki sees it, that they've kind of paired off? That doesn't seem to work, because Kyorya seems to be there on his own, or if anything, Kyorya and Tamaki play off each other.
Mom and dad.
As this kind of mother-father thing. And also at the beginning, like when they're talking about the health check, and there's an image of them standing shirtless saying, oh, maybe this is the year my height finally overtakes yours or something. And it's like, I don't know, it just... The homo thing in general, that is a line that comes up again and again and is a bit awkward. And okama comes up as well, which they translate as a queer, which is delightful. Could be worse, as we know from Hunter x Hunter. Could be worse, but...
Yeah, no, to go back to the stuff with the Twincest stuff, the Shotokan stuff, it is not super duper comfortable. It's one of those things I can kind of just brush aside because I know what the writer was doing was to take these unfortunately pretty popular tropes within the genre and to kind of hold them up to a light and go, hey guys, this is weird. See, Haruhi thinks this is weird, so maybe we should not. But I think because the show's first goal is to be a comedy, that it does not dig into that the way that it should. So I think it's totally fair to be uncomfortable with that, definitely.
To me, it's kind of the whole comedy, like, and then problematic stuff is like sort of how I feel like is a good way to describe the whole show, because I feel like it's these like a lot of these like nice things that it does and funny things that it does that kind of rest on this really troublesome bedrock. And it's just like anytime, yeah. So it's like I feel like I'm in a constant state of ambivalence of like, oh, I like the way that this thing happens on the kind of superficial surface level, and then as soon as you start thinking about it any more than that, then I start to be like, okay, this is actually like much more troubling to me. For me, the like biggest example of that is Tamaki and the way that he treats Haruhi, and because I feel like there's a really sort of like genuine feeling that I get from him in the way that he feels about Haruhi and wants to like care for her and, you know, keep her around, keep her as part of their like little in-group. But then at the same time, you know, he's always talking about like, oh, it'd be so much better if you were in like this cute dress, or, you know, if you made friends with the girls and went off and did girly things. Go ahead.
When they literally dress Haruhi up as in a middle school dress and miniskirt for the 6 episodes so they can sneak in, and then everyone else walks in behind her. Like, oh, yeah. We just did this for fun.
There's a like leg shot in there too. That's right before they come in, which like shocked me because I was not expecting that at all.
They were like, they lingered on that miniskirt shot because they're like, oh man, look at that. Which
is a shame because Haruhi herself, and I'm using she, her pronouns, but Haruhi doesn't seem to really care about gender.
Oh, God, no.
That was so refreshing. I'd forgotten how they handled that, and I think it's done so well, and I think that is still, to this day, that does hold up.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Like, watching this with no context, I absolutely adore Haruhi, and just the instant, like, oh, I'll just use Ouran now, at the end of the first episode was...
Yeah.
Like, shocking and incredible in a way that I never expected.
And she sustains that. Like, I don't know, should I be using she, her pronouns? Should I be using they, them?
And I'm speaking obviously from the perspective of someone who's seen the whole anime and read the whole manga. I think she, her is fine. I think Haruhi is the kind of person who, if you used a different pronoun on her, wouldn't care. But I think if she had to pick, because she generally comes back to sort of, I mean, again, and this is in itself inherently problematic, but at the beginning when they're like, are you a girl? She's like, yeah, biologically. Which I think is kind of where she stands. It's like, well, I was assigned female at birth, and I don't really care, so that's fine. That's what I've been going by my whole life. Which, again, there is an inherent problem to the concept of, anyway, you guys know, biological gender.
Yeah.
But to me, Haruhi, she kind of continues to come back to, oh, they'll find out I'm a girl. Oh, I'm actually a girl. Like, she seems okay with that concept. She just doesn't really care if she presents as a different gender. So I don't think she would mind whatever pronoun you used on her. And some people, I mean, that's some agender folks. There's the sense of not having a strong sense of gender one way or the other, which I can kind of relate to be honest.
Same. Deeply same.
Yeah. So it's not like I think I'd be really hesitant to say Haruhi is trans, because I don't think she has a strong enough sense of being a gender other than the one she was assigned at birth. But I think that you could probably make an argument for her being agender, just in the sense that she's much more focused on being seen as Haruhi than being seen as than being perceived as any particular gender.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay to you guys? Did that sound okay? Like, yes. I want to make sure I'm not.
That absolutely tracks.
Okay.
And this is something that we would definitely like people to tell us how they related to Haruhi, how they feel that she presents, how they kind of connect to her character. Like, if you feel that she would prefer they them, like, let us know. Like, this is something we're completely open to discussing and would love to come back to, I think. So especially if you are a viewer who is not cisgender, who feels a particular connection to Haruhi, let us know. Like, we want to talk about
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
Like, we don't want nothing in this discussion is supposed to be prescriptive. So just because the Anime Feminist podcast said it, like, therefore it is so. Like, absolutely.
Yeah,
not.
I'm
That is
not.
what
I'm
we
not
want.
trying to like write anything in canonical
No.
stone here. I'm just saying that kind of from my
Exactly.
perspective as someone who's been involved in the franchise for a bit. That's sort of the read I get on her. I think you can definitely say she's gender non-conforming too, because she doesn't seem particularly into dresses. Like, she doesn't hate them, but her reaction to them dressing her up and putting her in high heels and makeup was one of the more relatable. It was beautiful. It was like the most relatable moment. It's one I tweeted out a joke tweet that said if I tweeted it me with a screenshot of Haruhi every time she did something that I was like, oh yeah, you guys would block me because I'd be spamming your Twitter feeds. But yeah, they're like, you look so cute, and she's like, I don't care that I look cute. It's really hard to walk in these shoes and my face feels weird. I'm like, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, your view of her definitely, it rings true with what we've seen so far. So absent any kind of contradicting evidence as we go, I think if you want to use she, her, use she, her. If you want to use they, them, use they, them. We encourage conversation in comments and like response on social media. But that's how we'll approach it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
But yeah, I think that it completely rings true, because then when she has the health check come up and she's just like, oh yeah, they'll discover I'm a girl. Like, she doesn't seem particularly bothered by that.
She's more worried about the 8 million yen she owes than like everyone
exactly.
like saying something different to her, which is, it is what it is. It's an interesting reaction, and it says a lot about what she cares about as herself.
And the commoner thing that they lean into. Like, I find it hilarious, but also as an English person, is this obviously so taken from kind of English high society, aristocracy, that kind of thing. Like, we got a royal family, got that royal baby, all of that. Like, it's really strange to watch, because I've got such a chip on my shoulder about class here. I am squarely like lower middle class. Like, that's how I grew up. But it's like, I've met people like that and it's always really uncomfortable. So seeing that on screen as comedy, like, it is funny because we're kind of positioned with Haruhi and kind of laughing at the ridiculousness. So it's totally fine. But it's really, again, it's just really strange seeing this mashup of kind of this English aristocracy inspired upper class and also kind of contemporary Japanese school, and also like host culture, which is not what you would expect from this series at all. Although host culture gets romanticized a lot in Japanese pop culture as a whole. The idea of hosts being the one who heal women's hearts, etc. Like, that's not new. That's not unique to Ouran. So let's just talk for a few minutes about where we want to see it go from here. Isaac, you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah. Well,
next 6 episodes.
So, yeah, I guess I sort of talked about this a little bit, but with the like layering of like problematic things on top of comedy. And I guess especially for the like class stuff that we were just talking about, I do sort of feel like, because a lot of the like especially direct rebukes, like Haruhi's like, damn these rich people and whatnot, because a lot of that is presented as comedy, to me it lacks some critical bite, because it's like, oh haha, these like dumb rich kids, like they've never seen instant coffee before, which, and as a fish out of water thing, I do find I think it is really funny, but at the same time, with how like in your face and kind of abrasively rich a lot of the stuff the host club does is, I would like to see them bring something that's have a little more bite than just these kind of one-off quips, which of course we've got a lot of the show to go still before, so it certainly has time to do that. And then the other thing I think that I would really like to see is eventually, because I'm like torn here. So I can't decide if I think Haruhi or Tamaki is cuter, and because they're both so cute, like I'm like kind of invested in this like little like ship dynamic, one way love from Tamaki to Haruhi, but at the same time, like I said earlier, like the way that he treats her a lot of the time when he's not being like genuine and kind and just like overall a good person, which I think it's been hinted at that that's kind of like the core of who he is. There's still all this like artifice and these expectations he imposes on her. And I really like to see the show challenge and force him to change the way that he treats her and treat her more in accordance with kind of how she wants him to treat her, versus all these expectations. And I think, given what we've seen in the show so far, I think there's a chance that that'll happen, probably, hopefully, because other characters have been kind of more seriously rebuffed by the show for treating people like their stereotypes or like their vision. I think episode 4 does that really strongly with Renge, because it's very much like, okay, we're gonna put you all into your little boxes, and then it's like, no, this is not how people are. But then at the same time, like at the end, you've got like Tamaki at the end of that episode doing the exact opposite of that episode's lesson for Renge. So I'm like, okay, so when is he going to change that so I can like be so I can like have my ship, but like be happy about it,
That's not a requirement.
Yeah,
I want to have my cake and eat it too, basically, is what I'm saying, and it's this show so far is stopping me from doing that.
We've not talked about how it handles romance and shipping, which for a show about a host club, we probably should have discussed that. There was this moment at the end of episode 6 where what is it? How do he says? It's like, so is this the same as you? Because Shiro's like completely in love with this girl who is also like 10, and he's, what is it? They've given him this advice about having a wholehearted love, and Haruhi kind of says to Tamaki, "Oh, is he like you in this way too? Do you feel kind of a wholehearted love?" Was that right? And Tamaki's like, "Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm like," and he says it completely sincerely. And Haruhi looks at him for a moment, and it felt like if we were going to get a ship, like a two-way ship, that was the moment for it. When Haruhi looks at him, and she doesn't blush, she doesn't kind of look thoughtful or anything, she just smiles and says, "Oh, really?" or something like that. And it's just a really kind of casual response that kind of read to me as if she's thinking, "Oh, that's actually really nice," but not in terms of, this is now somebody who is attractive to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and she has a number of moments like that throughout these first 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Whichever episode had the kite that was like flying up and down through the episode as kind of like a barometer of her feelings. I can't remember which. Oh, I think it's episode 3.
It's the 3 one.
Yeah,
it's the medical
like
exam one.
going up and down, and it's like down when he comes out like dressed up as her. With the wig, yeah. But then at the end, he like says something really thoughtful about the doctor as they send him off on his way, and the kite like loops back up, and it's like, okay, you can like really tell really clearly like what Haruhi thinks of Tamaki. And I don't think at this point there's any sort of romantic attraction going that way. But there are those moments when he's like helping her find her wallet in the pond. At the end, where episode 6, where he's like, we've done a good thing. Like Haruhi, I don't know, when he shows like I said before, those like moments of who he genuinely is, like I'm kind of into that. So I mean, I'm like, I'd understand if Haruhi was like, yeah, nice boy.
Yeah, I think a lot of Ouran is about, again, these people who have kind of taken on these roles and then kind of and then Haruhi sort of trying to strip that away and see how much is bullshit and how much is who they actually are. Which again, I think the progression in Renge's episode to the twins episode does a really good job of sort of showing that sort of central theme and thrust of the series. So I think what you're talking about, these moments where Haruhi and Tamaki have these genuine moments with each other is a part of that for sure.
It's so good. It's so beautifully handled. And I even like the story of episode 2, which we've not discussed at all.
It's so cute. Oh,
it's adorable. And it's so beautifully handled. And I remembered episode 1 really clearly because I've seen that a few times. And I got to episode 2 and didn't remember anything. And it was just, I mean, they've come back to this theme twice now, the idea that if you are interested in someone specific, you have to do something specific for them. You can't just be kind of generic attractive person. You can't do generic things. You have to really focus on them. And that was in episode 2, that was just handled beautifully, and it was really touching. It was genuinely touching. I wasn't expecting that. It was really romantic. It was just it was so sincere in the midst of all this ridiculous, clownish, like bored rich kid episode. Like it was, I was honestly taken aback by it. It fits in with what we said earlier about how it covers, so it manages to balance so many different things well, like comedy and also kind of sincerity, and also its aesthetic, and also comic timing and so on. Like it does everything to a high standard. It's a complete package.
I think what you're talking about is kind of what I sort of touched on at the beginning and said we'd probably I'd wanted to come back to it at some point, is the idea that the host club is sort of this fantasy non-reality that people are sort of indulging in, but that the series is attempting to sort of establish a boundary between, okay, well, this is a fantasy thing and this is an actual real world thing. And so, so everything with Renge where she's actually starting to mess with actual people is perceived as being wrong, because it's like, well, no, now you're putting these fantastical fictional tropes that, are just supposed to be this goofy fantasy that you can kind of escape to onto actual people, and that's where the problems happen. But then I think with both Kanako in episode 2 and then Shiro with the piano in episode 6, the host club sort of recognizes, oh, these feelings are genuine. This isn't just us sort of like playing around in this escapist realm. And they recognize there being a difference there, and they treat those situations differently. I think that's kind of what you noted there, and why that moment is so genuinely sweet.
They say that the like mission of the host club is to bring happiness to the girls specifically, but in those like episodes, I like the sense I get is, well, that's what they say, but really a lot of the times it's like they're bringing happiness to everyone, not just to girls, when they do these like really generous things, which it's just something I really like.
And an obvious point of comparison, I was thinking, for Ouran is actually Hanayori Dango, Boys Over Flowers, because you've got this girl who's kind of this fish out of water, surrounded by very elite, rich, silly boys, and it's not handled in the same way at all. It's so much it is so much warmer, I think. Like Hanayori Dango, especially in the earliest chapters or the earliest episodes, depending which version you've seen, like it can be pretty hard going. She's treated very badly. She has a lot to overcome to get to a point where they see her as a person worthy of respect. And Haruhi gets there very quickly. I mean, respect is a really odd concept in this context because it's such a ridiculous show. But they do embrace her. They do, like, even when highlighting things about her as a commoner or as representing the common people, like, it's always done with this kind of sense of affection that is completely absent from Hanayori Dango, and it just makes it so much more pleasant to watch. Like, I'm already looking forward to the next 6 episodes. I can't wait to watch them through. I rewatched these first 6 episodes before coming to this podcast because I just enjoyed it so much, and I only watched them for the first time yesterday.
Wow.
Jeez.
You get through them quickly. Like, I mean, I did a Kill la Kill watch along, right? And that was hard work. I set aside an entire day to get through 6 episodes of Kill la Kill. It was such a struggle. This is a breeze. This is a delight.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I ended up marathoning these last night because of work scheduling kind of screwing up my time for watching anime. And this was, it was a joy. It was the thing. I sat down for 5 episodes, and then I realized, I just watched 2.5 hours of anime.
Right.
It's like, what?
And where do you hope it'll go from here, Alexis?
I really want to see more of these genuine moments, and also I really want Haruhi to just, like, rebuff the shit out of... Sorry, I don't know if we're doing cursing here.
Yes, okay. We definitely curse here.
Okay, good. I really want to see Haruhi just slam Tamaki about his insane fantasies. I get that that's like part of his whole character, but just the stuff that he thinks about her sometimes is really, like, it feels really weird to me because it's just this total gap between the way that they treat each other and this, like, weird, like, it's it's hard for me to put this together. It's like, because Haruhi is like basically presenting as male for everyone so much of the time, the way that he thinks about her as, oh, put her in a dress, I really want to see her hang out with this girl and grow more feminine, it feels really skeevy in a lot of ways for me, and I really hope that gets toned down. I know it's probably not gonna, but you know, I can dream. Other than that, I really want to see just more of the interiority of the boys. Like, the twins episode was a serious high point for me, and I really want to see more of those episodes just to learn more about these boys, because I enjoy most of them is the thing. So, and like, I even enjoy Tamaki when he's being Tamaki. It's just parts of him I do not enjoy.
Tamaki's my favorite.
I think he does. I think he does have some very restrictive ideas about gender. Which is what's bugging you and Isaac and me too this time around. Like, it was the kind of stuff we're watching it the first time. I kind of just went, well, Tamaki's an idiot.
Yeah.
And this time through, I was like, oh, this is also like kind of harmful, Tamaki. You should maybe back off on that.
Yeah. I'm glad that most of his wishes are not acted on, but also some of them are, because he, like, in the 6th episode, got that mini skirt. Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Although by then he's got allies, hasn't he? Because the twins are also interested in Haruhi by this point.
That's the thing.
They've joined in.
I really hope that because of that, this doesn't turn into, like, them all ganging up to try and get Haruhi into, like, weird situations. I suspect it won't, but I could see the route that they could take to go there in a less well-produced version of Ouran by like a completely different maker.
Yeah, like if it were a lazier show, that is totally an option they'd go for sure.
Exactly, but you know, I don't think they would.
Well, next episode is a pool episode, so I guess that's like moment of truth, isn't it?
Okay, I look forward to the next recording.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. Tamaki's my problematic fave. I love every moment he's on screen.
Fair.
I love his voice actor. I think he's hilarious. I think that because so much of the comedy kind of centers around Tamaki and his actions, and he's so over the top, and I absolutely love it. I can't get enough of it, but I completely take every point that everyone has made about how, he is kind of skeevy and kind of awful and a complete rich idiot, and he's not always very nice to watch, but I just enjoy him so much. I can't help it. So he is a high point for me. But at the same time, everything you said, Alexis, about wanting more interiority, wanting more of these kind of quiet moments, like, absolutely. I think they've built a really strong foundation on which to really kind of have those moments, and it doesn't feel out of place, it doesn't feel jarring, because comedy does that sometimes, where it's comedy, all of a sudden serious moment, and it feels out of place. And I think Ouran set it up so that actually it could hit any of these notes, and it feels cohesive. And that's incredibly well done for 6 episodes.
Like,
I think it's so accomplished.
By like episode 2, the way that was structured, where it was comedy and then it kind of like abrupt shifted into this girl that they were working with and figuring out what's going on between her and the tea guy. Like, I forget his name, sorry, but yes,
his name,
that hard pivot,
it doesn't matter.
Okay. That hard pivot into like drama and figuring it out works so well that I trust them with it now. So like now it's a thing. I really want to see more of it.
Yes, exactly.
Amelia, did that episode help you understand the appeal of childhood friends? Did you feel it? Did you get it?
I did not object to it.
Oh, well, that's... I can't tell if that's progress or not.
Genuinely, I have a big eye roll reaction to young people proposing to each other. Like, this is something that's not new. I'm not impressed by it ever. Whereas in this moment, because of the very specific context of young rich kids, I think it kind of worked. And it didn't even occur to me until afterwards. Wait, that was ridiculous. And I say this as somebody, like, one of my favorite films has a young couple proposing at the very end. I'm not going to say its name, actually, in case it's a spoiler, even though it's like 30, 40 years old. But it's you all know what I mean. But even that, I roll my eyes hard at that moment. And in this episode, I did not. So that was progress. But in general, childhood friends, there's still a way to go for it. But yes, it's a start.
Yeah, okay.
You can
You
suggest
start with the
for me
best
to-
and go up from there. She rides in the teacup at the end. She's so happy.
Yeah.
The teacup ride.
It's cute.
Yeah, it's a really sweet episode. I really loved it. In terms of what I want to see next, definitely more interiority, as we've said. Definitely more respect shown to Haruhi by Tamaki would be really nice. The two of them connecting is really good, really authentic. But something much more kind of superficial is the twins mentioned going to Haruhi's house. I really want to see that. I really want them to set foot in Haruhi's world and see if the tables turn when they're on Haruhi's turf and she doesn't have to kind of...
She's not playing by the host rules.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to see that. So I hope we get to see that. I really want to see them kind of set foot in Haruhi's world and see what it's like from that side. And I really want Haruhi to kind of stand her ground a little bit more there, because she tends to be more passive when she's in the host environment, which makes sense. She's working for the people she's in debt to, in a school where she doesn't fit in and where she's there on kind of by the grace of her good grades and reputation. So she doesn't have a lot of freedom there to screw up. Whereas if she got these guys out of there, I think it might be quite different. The power dynamic might shift a bit. I'd quite like to see that. So, D.
I hope Haruhi gets
From
to
our
eat fancy
discussion.
tuna. That's what I hope.
That's what I was going to say. That's exactly
Oh, was
it.
it? Perfect.
Yes, genuinely. I completely forgot this. Like, something missing. Yes, that was it. I want to see Haruhi eat this fancy tuna.
They keep teasing
And I
her.
hope they don't save it. Yeah, I hope they don't save it for the very last episode. That would be so sad.
But it would be so emotional.
It would be so emotional. What a climax to the series.
The
my
real
goodness.
story, the real love story in Ouran High.
Yeah, right.
I'd watch that. So, Dee, from our discussion today, has anything surprised you, or did it go pretty much as you would have expected?
The discussion went about the way I thought. The things that sort of surprised me were more things that, as I was watching it, I was like, "Oh, this is stuff that really didn't ping on my radar the first time through." I bet we'll
Right.
discuss that, and we have discussed those things. So a lot of the surprises for me came more from watching it, because again, even though I've seen some of these episodes like a dozen times, I've not seen the entire show all the way through in a while. So again, looking at it more from a critical perspective, and you know, the sort of things it does well and the things that it doesn't do so well, has led to some surprises with, again, like some of the ways that Tamaki acts that I'd never really thought too much about. Again, some of the genre tropes that are used in the show as kind of a joke on, it's kind of a commentary on the genre, but are still uncomfortable tropes, as you rightfully noted, are definitely points that kind of surprised me a little bit going in. But I think the conversation went kind of about the way I was hoping it would. I'm glad everyone is enjoying it, because my biggest concern was like, what if they don't like it? What if it's actually bad? So I'm glad you're all having a fun time.
I was surprised by how good it is. Like, it feels like a genuine high-quality series, and I wasn't really expecting that.
I would agree with that, honestly. Like, because I came in with no expectations at all. I've heard people talk about Ouran in, like, glowing terms, but it's an anime from 2006, so I was like,
Yes.
okay, how much of this is going to be rose-colored
Just, like,
glasses?
nostalgia.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm really pleasantly surprised to enjoy it as much as I have, even with, like, whatever reservations.
So it sounds like we're all looking forward to the next 6 episodes, which is always a great way to end a first
Yeah.
watch
Yay.
along, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap it up here for today. We will be back next week. So just a little bit of a housekeeping. If you like what we've talked about here, you'd like to find more work like that, please visit animefeminist.com. You can find us on Twitter at animefeminist. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/animefem. We have a Tumblr, animefeminist.tumblr.com. And we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/animefeminist. It is how we pay every single writer, editor, and administrator who contributes to the running of Anime Feminist and all the services that we use to keep afloat. So this is where 100% of the money goes. It's all laid out on the Patreon page, exactly where the money goes, what it goes towards. So if you can spare $1 a month, for us to continue our work, patreon.com/animefeminist. Please send it our way. And if you can spare $5 a month, then you get access to our exclusive Anime Feminist Discord server, where we can hold conversations like this every day without worrying about giving Feminism 101 lessons to randos on the internet. So thank you so much to Alexis, Isaac, and Dee. We will be back next time with episodes 7 to 12 of Ouran High School Host Club.